Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the first plenary of this class. I'm Manel Camps. I'm the provost of Crown, and it's my pleasure to introduce three speakers today. You got more than you bargained for. So I want to tell you a little bit more about Jaime. So I met Jaime during a trip I took to Bogotá last year when Crown was working on establishing the partnership with the Universidad Distrital. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of background. So he's an architect. He started his studies at a university called Universidad Javeriana, but he finished the last 2 years of his studies at Case Western in Cleveland. And then he taught for 3 years. And then he launched this project called Ciclovía that he's going to tell you about. And then it was super successful. So for the next few years, he worked both as a consultant, but he was also an advisor to the local government of the city of Bogotá and also of Cundinamarca, which is like the state that surrounds the city of Bogotá. In 1994, he actually became advisor to the presidential office that was part of the urban planning of Bogotá. So he went above the local government, city government, to the presidential government. And then more recently, he also was involved in the restoration of trails and railroad tracks in the state of Cundinamarca. So throughout his life, he's been adapting the theory that he learned at school and here in Cleveland, which was focused on individual transportation by car to the actual needs of the citizens of the city of Bogotá, which were very different. I mean, there, especially in the 60s, the car was a total luxury. So what's the point of building these big freeways for people who are actually going to use them? So, and 50 years later, he's thinking again ahead of how we deal with the challenge of decarbonating our transportation. And again, the solution has to be local. You know, you have to really think, what are how does it work in this local context? There's no single solution. And I think that illustrates what critical thinking means, right? So critical thinking means you hear all these ideas, but they have to make sense to you, and then you have to apply them in your context. And I think that Jaime is a great example of what critical thinking means. There's another subtext that I won't go too deep into, which is that essentially Jaime brings a different narrative than the one that we're used to. We're used to the narrative of quote unquote Western culture, and we're used to this being in the dominant one, practically the one that's been universally accepted. And essentially, we're used to having only one discourse. But in the world, there are many, many voices. And if you look at the world from a country that's not originally part of that Western culture, you have a very different view of the world. And we need to get used to keeping our ears open to other ways of looking at the world and engaging in dialogue with these other worldviews. So finally, I would like to comment that I met Jaime through an alum. So her name is Marilyn Shea Stoneham. She graduated in 1969. And she brought Jaime to my attention. So when I was there, that's how I met him. And there's this amazing group of alumni that's supporting this college, Crown. Most of the funding for these events and for the elective classes that you have come from alumni. So I want you to welcome you to the Crown community and think of this as a home for you that will continue to be your home even when you graduate. So all these connections that you're going to make here, hopefully you'll preserve when you leave the university, and you'll stay connected, because now former students are actually supporting you. And that's it. Thank you very much. Let's listen to Jaime.
Thank you. So good evening to all. Buenas noches. While I was preparing to come here, I imagine most of you know who Jimmy Buffett is. Jimmy Buffett is this folk rock musician that used to live in Florida, and who had these songs like Margaritaville and Changes in Latitudes, and Chances in Attitudes is the name of another of a record of his. So I decided that this would represent what I'm trying to express to you tonight. Of Unión de Naciones Asoleadas. For the ones who speak Spanish, they understand what that means. In Colombian, asoleado, we say of circumstances when somebody is bothering you, you have me asoleado, sunburned. That in English, I baptize it Sunny United Nations, and in French, Union des Nations Ensoleillées. Since I was a kid, and looking at the Mapamundis, I always had a conflict that my teachers never really got to solve. When they started calling that and saying that we belong to the Western culture, and me being located, me living here and telling me that the Western culture was there, I said, well, that's not the West, that's the East. And that Japan was a rising sun country. And I said, no, it's where the sun goes down. So what is this story? And more so when this is being told by someone who lives up there and has decided that the zero of the longitude is in England. How comes that? This is a sphere that rotates and translates, and a smart guy decided that zero was there in Europe. Well, a Mapamundi then, when you look at a Mapamundi from the east, from China, the center is in Beijing, and then the story is perhaps a little different. And if you have a Mapamundi of America, we have always in the center where we are. So this is a perspective that each one has developed in his own culture to assure his reality, his preeminence, his interests. And all that didn't fit my story. So I decided that I was going to do my Mapamundi. So something happened here. No, excuse me. Well, something went wrong, but the end is that I decided that my Mapamundi was going to be like this. La una, la Unión de Naciones Asoleadas, y la otra, in Spanish, one and the other. One, us. And the others, you. You people that live beyond the Tropic of Cancer or beyond the Tropic of Capricorn. So this is my Mapamundi now. I see the world this way. I do celebrate twice a year the equinox, when the sun is right above us. And tonight, please, all of you, look at your Mapamundi and see who we are in La Una. This goes along with another circumstances, which is the way when you people are used to this, or used to this, or used to this, then you decided I was born, and I was, as a kid, an underdeveloped kid, because I belong to an so-called underdeveloped country. I didn't name that. My people didn't name ourselves that way. The people from the north decided that anything that was below their world, their northern world, it was underdeveloped. That was in the 40s, 50s. Then somehow someone felt that it was kind of unjust to call me underdeveloped. So they decided that I was differently developed, but it still was the same outlook of things. Then they decided that it wasn't that good. So they called us the third world. And recently, and since 1969, by the way, an American person by name Ogilvy, that happened to be member of the Students for a Democratic Society. I don't see too many here with the age that could remember what the Students for a Democratic Society was. Is there anyone, does anyone knows what the Students for the Democratic Society was in the United States in the 60s? Well, it was one of the most radical groups in the United States in the times of the counterculture. And he made a new definitions that he expressed it since the circumstances of Vietnam War. And he said, the global South, and the global South is that piece of the world that they think that goes basically in the Tropic of Capricorn, and the rest is the global South. I don't understand why they call it the global South, because, for example, Bogotá is 4 degrees above the equator. So we are in the north. And that's why the definition of my Mapa Mundi, to make this fast, is this. I think it's more accurate to say that this is the global South, this is the global North, and we are the new power. We are the people that have the sun. We are the people that did not create the climate change. We are the people that did not, we do not produce with somebody who did. For example, China and India, who belong to us, they have the problems. But most of us, we don't create the climate crisis. So what we were underdeveloped, and now with the new look of the world, we are the developed ones. We don't have the problems you have. So this is a different way to see the Mapa Mundi, and I want to start there just to open this conversation. So, since you saw, I switched the world, so the sun comes up there and disappears down here. This is South America. And what happens in the case of this continent, in La Una, we have the largest tropical forest in the world. We are the producers of oxygen. I said already that we have the sun, we have the water, we have absolutely everything. And obviously the circumstances that we don't realize it. We want to be developed like you. We want to have what you have. But we are starting to think in a different way. and realizing and valuing what we are. Okay, so have you heard the term oriented and disoriented? Well, that's it. This map is oriented. The orient is there. So you're gonna be a little while looking at like this. I hope you don't get some pain looking at the world, but you have to start looking at the world from a different point of view, I think, since all these crises are going to be facing. Well, in South America, there's a big chain of mountains that comes all the way from Patagonia and ends here in Colombia. When it comes in Colombia, divides in three chains of mountains. And that is, Colombia is like if you have the Sierra in California, the Rockies, and the Appalachians all together in a close, creating a mountainous country, completely mountainous country that has the three chains of mountains, the coast, the plains is like Texas is here, and then we have the Amazonia and the Orinoco, which is the jungle. We face the Mare Nostrum, the Europeans call the Mediterranean, the Mare Nostrum. Our Mare Nostrum is the Caribbean, and we have all this coast in the Caribbean, and we have also the Pacific on this side. Here you see the three chains of mountains, the rivers that flow towards the Atlantic, and the rivers that go to the Orinoco, and the rivers that goes to the Amazonia. And Bogotá is located on the eastern Oriente chain of mountains, and I live in a city at 2,600 meters above sea level. Therefore, the climate in Bogotá, the climate in all this area being tropical is very hot permanently throughout the year. But as you go up the mountains, it gets cold. And Bogotá is a city that has a weather like spring weather all year long. All this, I'm trying to create an environment for you to understand why things happen the way it happens there. Okay, Cundinamarca, that Provost mentioned, is the states surrounding Bogotá. Bogotá is here. This is oriented the same way. And in the case of there's the area, the population is around 3 million people in Cundinamarca without Bogotá, and it produces 32% of the national product and 25% of national formal employment. That's Cundinamarca. In Bogotá is a city of 8 million people, and is a huge place where most of things, economical and political and social, happen in Colombia. And so I'm going to talk about the city, getting close to talk about bicycles. I'll finally talk about bicycles. The city, I was born, I'm a baby boomer. I was born in 1946. In 1946, Bogotá had 800,000 inhabitants, 800. In my lifespan, that grew to 8 million. In 77 years, it's very big, but it was a very small town with a system of transportation by trams, a very provincial town like that started to change when the car was introduced by 1940s. And by 1948, something happened in Bogotá. This is right after the war, the Second World War. And the United States and the Pan American system decided to organize a Pan-American event in Bogotá to create an alliance between the Americas. The Pan-American Conference brought all the presidents and representatives of all the countries of America to build what today is la OEA, Organización de Estados Americanos. And at that moment, something happened, which was they killed a political leader, and the forces of the people decided to burn Bogotá. So by 1948, I was 2 years old. The whole downtown of Bogotá and its mass transit system was burned. It was burned, and it was a very strange circumstance because all these Pan-American presidents were there at that right moment. There's a theory that this was induced by it's important to say that this is the beginning of the Cold War. The Americans were trying to make America get it together to face what was coming with the Russians and to overcome. There was a big influence. In Latin America, there was a big German influence before the war. Having won the war, the Allies, they decided they were to get organized to face the challenge the Russians, the Soviet Union was going to face. So there was this geopolitical thing there, and they burned Bogotá. But right after that, they came, the Americans. The Americans came with the image of the country, the image based on the car. This is the car that perhaps my father would have liked to own, but we started to develop this very strong relationship between the United States and, in this case, Colombia, Bogotá, with the introduction of the image of the car. You saw that the city had very few cars. We moved by trams, but at this moment, they did all a strategy, and they brought to Bogotá a very famous architect and urbanist Swiss called Le Corbusier. And Le Corbusier was at that time one of the greatest figures of the modern movement in architecture and urbanism. So they came to redesign the future after having been burned, to redesign the city, and he redesigned it based on the image of the American city, based on the image of the car city. So with big streets and the car showed up in Bogotá seriously. It ended up having many streets designed from with American standards, basically, and it's a city designed for cars that nobody has, because cars are very expensive things in Colombia, and up until today, only 15% of daily trips in Bogotá are made by car. In an average city, an average American city, between 90 and 95% of daily trips are made by car. So what happened? We bought the image of the new city. Here you have Los Angeles and the highway coming into the cities. So we wanted to have the same. So we have the tall buildings and the streets being built for cars. And that was, by then, I was in my teens. And that's the image of the car and the image that they sold me. That's what I would have wanted to have in those days in Bogotá. But what was the reality? The reality was that everyone moved on buses. You see, this is a street of Los Angeles, and that's the street in Bogotá. most trips of Bogotá are made by mass transportation on the surface with buses. So we had a design for cars, but we filled it in with buses. So obviously it didn't work because you should have designed for the buses instead of for the cars. So we've been struggling throughout the 50s and the 60s with that dichotomy between having a street design for cars, but we have the city filled with cars. You see, there is one car there and there's one bus here. And that makes the whole difference. So we lived in this very strange reality in Colombia, particularly in Bogotá. That's it. This is the main, one of the main arteries in downtown Bogotá that was designed as a street when it should have been designed as a station to receive the buses. I said that only 15% of daily trips are made by car. We're still there. This is a recent picture. We decided to introduce a system of dedicated lanes for buses. So we are filled with buses right now. Obviously, this is a circumstance created by a storm or something, but you see that we are filling the surface, the available space in the city with buses to move the amount of people we have to move. Bueno, that's to give you an idea what the reality of the city is. We're not talking now about the bicycle. That's my bicycle. That's the bicycle I move on. I am not a permanent cyclist. I'm an occasional cyclist, and I move around a neighborhood and near my house in this, which is a 77, it has my age, 77-year-old bicycle. It's an English bicycle, it's an English standard for the guys who deal with bicycles. It's a classic. It is a 3-speed Stormy Archer in the back. It has a generator for the lights. That's my bicycle. That's the type of bicycle that many people in Colombia used because the English standard was established, and that's the bicycle that everyone used. Let me tell you that cycling in Colombia is a very important thing, not from the moment of Ciclovía, but throughout the 20th century, peasants and workers moved by bicycle. So we have a very long tradition of using bicycles. There are many trades that deal with bicycles. That's a very common images of any town or neighborhood in Colombia. People work with that. These guys are called the crickets because they carry the machines to mow the lawns, to mow the lawns. And that's an image of the 50s, 60s in Bogotá, the buses, a taxi, a bicycle. This is an image of people being retained because the car started to make a fight against bicycles and cyclists. So the authority started bothering the people. And every Colombian, when we open the window every morning, as I showed you before, you open the window and there's always a mountain in front. So we decided that we were going to cross these mountains, and being racers became a big thing in Colombia. Today, one of the best cyclists in the world that go to the Tour de France and the Giro d'Italia are born in Colombia. And they started when the roads were not paved. I mean, it was a really difficult time. So it was this is an evolution of cycling. We said the workers rode bicycles. Now they run on bicycles, of racing bicycles, and became great racers. Some figures. And there's another huge use of bicycling in Colombia, which are the cargo bicycles. Today they are very popular, but we've been using cargo bicycles for almost 100 years. That's another type of bicycle. And that's one ex-president of Colombia riding his bicycle near his farm, near Bogotá. When I came back to Bogotá in the 70s, having lived here and having had the fortune to have a formal education as an architect in a university like yours, I did also have the fortune of having a second education on the streets. From 1967 until 70, many things were happening in the United States. All kids were fighting against the Vietnam War. There was the human rights movement. There was, women's leave. Everything was happening to the point that you created the so-called counterculture. So I learned that things could be changed if people move. And I learned that here. I learned that how the young people moved around and shifted many things around. So when I went back to Bogotá and found that reality that I already showed, I decided that I was going to do something about that. And I was very lucky to find again the bicycle which I had lost. As a kid, I had a bicycle and I used it. But when I became an adolescent, the girls in my time didn't ride bicycles. So I had to start stealing my father's car to go and pick up the girls. So I lost the contact with bicycles, but when I came back, I found on the bicycle so much content. I mean, so much, the word is contenido. Contenido? Huh? Yeah. Content. No, pero no. So much force, contenido, to contain so many important elements. It was a symbol of the environmental movement. It was a symbol, in the case of Colombia, of the social reality. It was an economical symbol. It was an aesthetic symbol. Bicycles are beautiful things. So I found them and I decided that in my debates on urbanism, I was gonna help make the bicycles visible, because they did exist, but nobody legislated for them, nobody designed for them, and nobody invested in them for them. So that's how La Ciclovía came about. La Ciclovía, we were two architects that decided that we were going to help educate a generation that could look at the bicycle from a different point of view, so that we create a massive movement that today is very big in Colombia. Almost 8% of daily trips to Bogotá today are made by bicycles. These were the three guys. We started the whole thing. And this is these are the news of the newspaper, the 15th of December of 1974. This is the first time the city saw the closure of the streets for cycling. And this is my colleague, and we call that the Great Pedal Strike. So we closed the street, a main street, and we started doing Ciclovía. That's me on the left, and that's the proof that I did have 25 years, hair and black. There's another colleagues, and that's the image that to me represents what Ciclovía is all about. Ciclovía has become a place where anyone can come in. First, women. This was a neutral space where women could come in. The children are a very important part and the mix of all these users has created a circumstance that allows all of them to stay there. And that's how you get 1.5 million to 2 million people on the street with no police, with no money, with no religion, and with no politics. It's a civic event, a huge event that has developed from the self-control of the people. I mean, they created this environment, this neutral environment where anyone can fit in and anyone can feel comfortable. That's in 1976. That was part of our success. The mayor of the city decided that Ciclovía was going to be run by the city, and it's been run for 50 years by the administration. That's a picture of Ciclovía today. That's Main Street, and as you can see, it's a huge event every Sunday throughout the year. That's another view. All kinds of events happen. There is already organized the vendors, and there is recreational things happening all along. And I insist, can you imagine 1.5 million people on the streets alone? There we are, that's Ciclovía. Today we have 127 kilometers of ciclovías throughout the city. That's 80 miles. It's all over the place. And now there are many places where Ciclovía, and that's some kind of a sample of where Ciclovía is happening. Here in the United States and North America, there are many places right now. Again, we are looking at the world the way I see the world. And this is Los Angeles, 10-10-10. This is the first day we did Ciclovía in Los Angeles, which I had the honor to advise the city and the mayor of then Mayor Villaraigosa, and that's LA with Ciclovía. That's the mayor, and that's a colleague of mine in Los Angeles. Who is from Los Angeles here? Okay, so who has gone to Ciclovía? 2? But everyone knew about Ciclovía. The people from Los Angeles. Okay, I'm going to be on Sunday because there is Ciclovía on Sunday. I'm going to be there. Well, I'm getting close to an end, telling you and inviting all of you to celebrate the 50 years of Ciclovía, which is going to be celebrated next year. We're going to do a great events in Bogotá, but we want that many people around the world that use Ciclovía celebrate on Sunday. I hope to go back to Bogotá with the compromise of Los Angeles to make a Ciclovía on the name of Bogotanos next year. And I would like to end this presentation reading something that I think better said and better written from someone who's a Californian. She's a Dr. Adonia Lugo. She's from Los Angeles, and she's urban anthropologist. She wrote this document, and I brought a short part of this document that defines in a much better way than I can do what she saw. Adonia Lugo went to Bogotá in 2008 to gather information to make Ciclovía in Los Angeles. She went there and she contacted me, and then she wrote this document called How Ciclovías Can Unfreeze Streets and Open Them to Equitable Human Infrastructure. And one small chapter of that, of her, reads this way. Ciclovía as post-colonial protest. Like many people, I first learned about Bogotá, Colombia's Ciclovía from the street film on the subject that Clarence Eckerson posted online in late 2007. The following summer, I secured fieldwork funding to visit Bogotá through an LA Through an LA connection, I met someone who suggested that I speak with Jaime Ortiz, who worked for the mayor then, and this is how I came to see the Ciclovía as an intervention disrupting habitual uses of social space. As part of the Procicla group that also includes Fernando Caro and Rodrigo Castaño, Ortiz founded the Ciclovía in 1974, having returned to Bogotá from his undergraduate studies at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. He saw the event as an outgrowth of his participation in the 1960s counterculture events in the States. When I asked him about this over email in May 2013, Ortiz explained that in the center of Procicla, the bicycle was the symbol and the Ciclovía was the instrument we came up with to open the debate on urban processes and urban form in Colombia in the 70s. Urban safety, betterment of public space, community health, recreation, generation of urban consciousness, development of social integration, etc., were also aims of the event, today proven as an end result of that process. As countless protesters have attested, streets can be used to demonstrate beliefs about social inequality beyond the street. The Ciclovía accesses is a potent social demonstration element of street space without asking participants to take on an identity as protesters, which make them more inclusive than countercultural phenomena such as critical mass. Critical mass, you know, is this movement that on Fridays makes bicycles around. Ortiz also spoke about this post-colonial significance of a transportation idea from South America, taking hold in the United States. Colombia followed American highway designs, approximating modernity through automobile infrastructure. But now Americans were looking to Colombia for alternatives. He sketched me a map of the world that showed what they call the global center as opposed to the global south as the Unión de Naciones Asociadas. Instead of us sending car culture to Colombia via highway engineering, as had been the trend, they were sending car-free events north, or rather, as Ortiz put it, we were the provincianos, and they were universalizing us. Has this message about challenging power been muted as Ciclovía organizers in the United States have focused on open streets as spaces of individual health? Following my meeting with Ortiz, I returned to Los Angeles in September 2008, and with others started the organization process that resulted in Ciclovía on October 10. Have argued elsewhere, our efforts with Ciclovía benefit tremendously from LA endemic diversity, which ensured that the human infrastructure for bicycling there had ties beyond the pastime for white folks. Scope that limits bike advocacy in other parts of the country. Ciclovía's orientation toward the unique character of bicycling in LA greatly aided its success and has contributed to investment in bicycle improvements for existing low-income users. It seems indisputable that Ciclovía has contributed to the development of new ideas about using streets in Los Angeles, and this is what unfreezing should mean. Thank you. Asked your patience with my language is that all parrots don't learn to speak, and I learned English very old, but I hope I got through to you. And I will be very happy to answer or hear commentaries and answer your questions. Well, as I said, the bicycle is such an important symbol that I decided that I should make that symbol a reality. And La Ciclovía, you know, if you people today have it rough fighting the car, putting it away, fighting the car. In Colombia, it was very, very difficult to try to start with gaining space immediately for the bicycles. So the idea was to use the use of temporary existing spaces and to start adjusting and start creating the space for the bicycle. So the Ciclovía, by being on Sundays, where the car was parked, where there was, by the way, there was no, the buses didn't run in Bogotá with the quantity and the needed. And also we did not have enough parks. So via recreation, we have educated 2-3 generations that are the cyclists of today in Colombia. I have to admit that I thought it was going to take shorter time. It took 50 years, but here we are, still alive. Any other question? Yeah. Great question. I was born to this world in the 70s with a wave created by the oil crisis of the early 70s, when cycling became important throughout the world. So I am a son of that. I rode that, I surfed that wave of the 70s. After that boom, which was a huge boom in the 70s, it declined and nothing happened. In the United States, didn't happen, for example, didn't happen much. And recently, with pandemia, we have a new wave, and we are now surfing on that wave. There is a lot of loudness from my point of view. When you ask me what I think is next, there's a lot of loudness around cycling, and loudness that is in a violent way. We are supposedly fighting the car. I was telling the provost when I got off the plane, every time I come here and I see the magnitude, the size, the quality, the fantastic reality of what's the interstate highway system, and the car world in the United States. What's going to be next now that we are thinking that we have to replace the fossil fuels? And what is going to happen in the United States with the car? Now everyone is talking about the electric car, but obviously the electric car is going to have so many complications, beginning with the idea that the lithium is in the UNA, and we own it, and let's hope we start raising the price so we can somehow get money. So what I think is that we have to start adjusting the debate, and it has to be, it cannot be one solution. One thing is being in Bogotá, another thing is being in Los Angeles or in Paris. Today, everyone talks about Paris and how Paris, the mayor, has closed some streets to cycling. But Paris has 400 kilometers of subway and 200 in construction. What is going to happen to LA? But when you have such a huge structure for the car, are we going to share the space? Are we going to be riding bicycles on the highway? I don't know. It could be. We don't know. So you ask me in Bogotá, we are at this moment on a huge debate, public debate, because as you saw, we decided wrongly, from my point of view, to use the available space on the surface, which is scarce in cities, to run buses. So the fight between the bus and the car right now is war. We are the most congested city in the world right now. And now comes the cyclist and trying to hit the buses and trying to hit the cars. We have to start thinking how we are going to share the limited space, and we have to start deciding what bicycles should do. what are they best used? I mean, to try to move 8 million people on bicycles, can you imagine the congestion? Okay, so cycling has to be analyzed, and we have to decide what is best, where the bicycle is best, perhaps in a small scale local use, and get organized so that the bicycle can get to stations and be exchanged to mass transit, possibly. But we are trying to close the focus. Today is we are the best, we are the good, we are God, and the rest move. No, let's hold it. We have to decide by closing the focus where bicycles are best, and that's where we have to put our money. I don't know if I can. We're far away, no? Any other questions?
Thank you first for the presentation. That was amazing. Does Bogota have like a toolkit and a methodology and an explanation, and kind of like from the city's perspective, why they continually invest in it? I ask because can we have all of that to try to put, you know, in practice here in the city of Santa Cruz, for example?
Yes, we have a lot of experience. And if you heard, the city administration runs Ciclovía, but also I did not expand the presentation. We have already built 500 kilometers of permanent bike routes. So we have a huge net, being Ciclovía and exceptional circumstances. But yes, and I will be very pleased to put you in contact, in the case of Ciclovía, with the institution that runs it in Bogotá, and with the institution that runs the project of permanent cycle routes in the city. Yes, con mucho gusto.
You said at the beginning when you first started Ciclovía, that you said that later the city picked it up and started running it. So how did you start doing it without having support from the city?
How did we start? Oh yes, we were a civic movement. We were activists, and the first thing is we had your age, and so we gathered people, and we were fortunate to have the connections to be able to speak to the mayor, that allowed us to prove him by closing the streets, well, what could happen. But yes, we are very lucky that two things happened. Three, I said that there was a long tradition of cycling in Colombia, right? So it was nothing new. Second, from the beginning, being such a humble start, people appropriated the responsibility. So for many years, almost 15 years, even though it was run by the city only invested on one truck, one driver, and one helper, and 100 signs that the helper and the truck were dropping at the intersections of main intersections. So the people self-controlled themselves from the beginning. So there was a time where they're trying to close it. The people wouldn't allow Ciclovía to be closed. There was a time when there's something very complicated. There was times of violence, a big violence in Bogotá, in Colombia. And I was always, every Sunday, I woke up saying, today they're going to put a bomb on Ciclovía. They never have dared, the violent people. They never dare touching Ciclovía, because it's a people's event. So that's part of the secret, to try to obtain the the acceptance and the responsibility of the people to run things. And then, fortunately, 3 years later, well, the city started absorbing the responsibility and making the investment. So today, there is a huge investment on running Ciclovía, but it's paid by the city. I know the circumstances in the cities in the United States are different. Los Angeles has to pay a lot of money to hire the police, to hire the firemen, the insurance, whatever. And the city has not yet said, well, this is my thing.